The biggest challenge I hear from most ADHD women is getting themselves to do stuff, especially the stuff they don't feel like doing, the important stuff. And the biggest mistake I see most ADHD in this situation with this challenge make is they chase after the right tools or strategies to help them do it. And if they find one, and it doesn't work or it works for a while and stops working, then they feel shame, like they're bad or they're messed up and can't do it because of their ADHD. So I want to talk about this because none of that is true. You're not bad. You're you get up every morning and you do the damn best you know how. I know that's true. I've been a social worker for, well, I've been in the field since the year 2000. I couldn't call myself a social worker till I got my master's in the year 2005. So I've been a social worker a long time, working with people a long time in a lot of different aspects. And I can tell you this, everyone, including you, with the exception of like 4% of the population that's like sociopaths or psychopaths, everyone gets up and does the damn best they know how with the inner and outer resources they have at any given time inside of the circumstances they're in. That's how I know you're not bad. But that's actually not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how to actually address the real problem with getting stuff done. Because sure, ADHD does make it more challenging to do stuff, especially if you try to do stuff the neurotypical way, because our brains are not motivated the same way neurotypical brains are. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of times is there are underlying things going on, things beneath the surface that even if you had all the right tools and strategies in the world, you still might not be able to get yourself to do stuff. That's what I want to talk about today. I will say this quickly about the tools and strategies. Just know with ADHD, you're probably going to do one for a while. The novelty will wear off and you need to switch to a different one. That's normal with ADHD. That doesn't mean you're bad or can't stick with anything. It's just how your brain is wired. And so you can spend all kinds of energy trying to stick with the same tool, or you can spend that energy getting shit done with a new tool that's more exciting for you. That's what I'll say about that. Now to the topic at hand, which is these underlying, often invisible obstacles. I've seen a lot of brilliant ADHD women entrepreneurs with amazing ideas and just a fire, a passion to help others struggle to get themselves to do things. And like I said, sure, some of it is about figuring out how to work with the way our ADHD brains are wired to get yourself to do stuff. But a lot of times I notice ADHD women having very hard time putting themselves out there, being able to post consistently on social media or send an email out or make offers to people. And when we lean in and get curious, a lot of times what's beneath this is underlying fear, doubt, or even hidden insecurity. And that one's tough because if you follow me, you might be similar to me in the sense that, you got through, you masked by over functioning and high achievement. And so when you look at your accomplishments, you don't feel like you have insecurity. You're like, yeah, look at all this shit I did. I'm pretty awesome. Maybe you don't feel like that. But sometimes it can be confusing to see that we might have insecurity if we feel pretty good about how we look on paper. But the reality is when we really get into it, sometimes we notice that there are inner parts of us that feel shame or don't feel good about our ADHD, that keep us masking for fear we would be found out, that we are less than this perfectionistic, people pleasing version that people love and can expect great things from. Because the reality is, as long as you're still masking, there's insecurity there because you're not aligned with who you are. I'm not saying we don't choose to mask occasionally. For example, if I'm in a conversation with family members and I'm one of the few ADHD people in the conversation, I will choose to do conversation a little bit more neurotypically. I will try not to interrupt or what they call interrupting as much, even though with other ADHDers, I could be excited and we're all contributing to the conversation in a big circle. Neurotypical folks will find that offensive and that would be hard to connect with them. So, because I desire those connections, sometimes I will choose to mask, but it's less about I'm ashamed of who I am and more with the intention of how can I show up in a way that is conducive to this relationship that's important to me. So, if you are still masking and it's not about intention and how do I show up in a relationship, finding balance between being completely my unfettered ADHD self and also meeting that person with their needs and wants as well. Anything other than that makes me think like, maybe there's some parts of you that don't feel great about yourself. Or maybe if you're having a hard time posting on social media or asking people to work with you, what is it that you're afraid of? There may be a part of you that's afraid to put yourself out there, that's afraid someone might hate on you or say something nasty. And then because of RSD, you couldn't handle it and you'd crumble and maybe even spin about it for days or weeks, making it even harder to put yourself out there in the future. Or perhaps you doubt yourself. So maybe there's something inside of you that makes it really hard to make offers to people, to invite people to DM you to work with you, to DM them or to get on calls with them, send messages to your list to share about how people can work with you. Because maybe deep down, something inside you doubts your ability to help them, or if they would be disappointed in what you offer. And sure, on the outside, on the upper layers, and maybe your highest self all believes that you're awesome. And you might feel fearless and you might feel, well, maybe not fearless. Fearless would be kind of dangerous, actually. We want to have some, healthy awareness of threat. And at the same time, if you're feeling bogged down, like you just can't get yourself to do stuff, chances are you're having some of these inner obstacles. So I want to talk about where this comes from. And sure, there are plenty of other ways that you can come about this, especially if you have a history of complex trauma. What I want to talk about is specific to ADHD. So even if, like me, you masked through overfunctioning and high achievement, you likely still received more criticism, correction, and negative commentary than your non ADHD peers. You may have heard me talk about Dr. Michael Jelinek, who's a psychiatrist. He has estimated that by age 10, starting school age, so we're talking like ages 5 to 10, ADHD kids receive 20,000 more negative, critical, or corrective comments than their non ADHD peers. Now, listen, I was an amazing student. I really was. But there were still signs of my ADHD. Every single report card talked about how I talked too much and I needed to stop talking so much during class and I needed to raise my hand and wait my turn to speak. My locker was always a mess and I got feedback about that. My room was a disaster and I got correction and criticism about that. Although eventually my mom was like, screw it, I don't care. As long as your shit isn't in my house, you can have your room however you want it until we have guests because you have the main floor bedroom and they're going to put their coats in there. So you can choose to clean it up along the way or the day before. It's your choice. But generally speaking, that's not our experience. Instead, the adults in our lives, believing they were helping us, and maybe to some degree they were, tried to help us behave more neurotypically by correcting us and criticizing us and giving us negative commentary, which was the standard way to raise kids back when I was young. Not to sound old or anything, but most of us Gen Xers were not raised the way kids are now. And I would even say the millennials weren't either. Perhaps some of you Gen Zers haven't been raised the way that kids are now with more acknowledgement of what is going on with the kid and their behavior communicating something and seeing if you can work with them instead of butting heads against. So a lot of us received criticism, complaint, negative commentary, correction by well meaning folks who were just trying to help us be functional adults. And maybe to some degree that worked. I mean, I'm pretty functional as a grown up. However, what I also had to work through to get to where I am now is the shame I carried, the depression that some of that created, both from all the negative commentary that I had adopted, parts of me that reminded me what a piece of shit I was back when that was a thing, but also having to figure out who I was after all that masking. So, a lot of times we hold all of that woundedness and perhaps anxiety on top of it because we're trying to keep everything together so we don't get in trouble. And that is often how we end up with these invisible obstacles, these we just bump into these barriers. We feel stuck and limited and just like a block. And it's like, I can't do this. I don't know how to get myself to do this thing. And a lot of times it's because it's not just what's happening now. There's stuff going on in your body that your body holds from the past, that parts of you hold from the past, that for them, it's not safe for you to post on social media. It's not safe for you to make offers for people to work with you or to raise your hand in a mentorship program, to stand up at a meeting and advocate for yourself or what you want in your profession. For whatever reason or whatever thing it is, the history that you have is likely why some of those things are hard. So that it's more than just layering over tools and strategies, but the work is also figuring out how do we work with your inner system in a way that helps you heal those old wounds so that it feels safe again for you to show up fully in the world or as fully as one can in the world and not just do well in your business, but in your life. So, one piece of this is in all of this struggle to kind of keep your shit together, is a lot of our nervous systems also get dysregulated. And so then we not only struggle with the underlying stuff and some of the limiting beliefs we create from the underlying stuff, but we struggle because we bounce back and forth between our fight or flight response and our shutdown response. That was me for years before I ever went to therapy and figured out some of the stuff I know now. But as you learn to work with some of the underlying wounds, as you address some of the limiting beliefs that you've adopted based on those experiences and limiting beliefs you got from the grown-ups in your life when you were young, as you do that and as you learn how to regulate your nervous system and feel safe enough in every moment to connect, rest, and digest as much as possible. I mean, not when there's a legitimate life threatening danger. But once you get to that place, then you will be better able to do the things you want to do. You won't feel held back anymore by all of this stuff that feels outside of your awareness. So, I want to talk a little bit about how to do this work. It's work that I spend a lot of time. In fact, it's most of the work I do as a coach, but also work I do as a therapist. A lot of times it's helping people unburden or release these pains, these hurts, these wounds from the past. And with coaching, we also release some old stories and limiting beliefs. It's hard to spot that stuff on your own. You can spot it, but it can be hard to fully release it, which is why I work with people as a coach. I think it's really important. It's actually why in my program Ascend, I offer 12 one-to-ones with people because I think people actually need that to move beyond the stuff. It's more than just mindset stuff. Mindset stuff is just brushing the surface. I'm not saying mindset isn't important, but mindset doesn't actually go through your whole being. It just makes parts of you be really good at managing things from that mindset. But then when the shit hits the fan or you're triggered by a comment or a look or a, I don't know, whatever, then all of a sudden that mindset goes right out the window because it wasn't something you adopted or felt in your bones. It wasn't something you embodied. It's just something you convinced yourself or many parts of you to believe for now, which is why it can be really dangerous when there's all these mindset programs being like, oh, well, just do this. It's really important that you're actually doing the deeper work. Otherwise, it's all just like spiritual bypassing and cognitive behavioral therapy, which don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing CBT. It does have its purpose. However, what I will say in my life, I had a crap ton of CBT in my early therapy, and all it did is made parts of me really, really good at managing and making it hard for me to heal the deeper stuff because I didn't have connection to it anymore because I thought I'd changed my mindset. But the thing is all that underlying stuff still was there laying dormant until I went bigger than I had before. And then it would pop up and pop up and pop up, blocking me. So I actually think one-to-one coaching is really, really important for working with this stuff. I will say you can start to notice your own limiting beliefs and where some of these parts are that are holding you back by looking for patterns. So if you're someone who has a lot of self-awareness, you might be able to do this by looking at what are things you do over and over that are ineffective, and then meditating on that, writing about that, because that is where there is something inside of you that is stuck in the past, likely a part of you that holds a belief based on the past that may have served you at one time and for a while, right? So we're not trying to suppress that either, because that's not effective. That's kind of what CBT does, is what I'm saying. But instead, we're trying to say, oh, look, there's this part of you that has worked really hard to help you with this belief it adopted to help you get to where you are now. It's just that that belief no longer fits your life and that behavior is no longer serving you. In fact, it's getting in the way, even though this part of you is just trying to help. So, this is the work I do. This is the work I love to do. And if you are totally up for this work, I would love it if you would check out my website in the description and see there's lots of ways you can work with me, whether that's in my program Ascend for ADHD women entrepreneurs, although it's a lot of professional women, not everyone's actively working on their business. It's a small group, high touch program at a lower tier cost. Also, you can certainly look at one-to-one coaching options with me. And for a while, if you're like, I don't know, Jen, I don't know if I vibe with you, stay in my space. Subscribe to this channel. Check out my podcast. I would love for us to get to know each other. Take care.